The Galactic Council chamber hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 100 worlds gathered for an emergency session. Ambassador Krixtar of the Zelathi Empire stood at the central podium, his four arms gesturing dramatically as he addressed the assembly. "The humans have gone too far this time," he declared, his mandibles clicking with each word. Their colony ship entered the restricted zone near the Void Nebula. When our patrol vessels ordered them to turn back, they refused. They claimed they had every right to explore what they called unclaimed space. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Void Nebula had been off-limits for 3,000 years, ever since the ancient precursors had vanished after conducting experiments there. Strange energies still pulsed from its depths, and ships that ventured too close never returned. "What happened to your patrol vessels?" asked Ambassador Sherlon of the Aquari Federation, her translucent skin shimmering with concern. Krixtar's compound eyes darkened. "The humans disabled them with some kind of electromagnetic pulse weapon. Non-lethal, but it left our ships drifting helplessly while the human colony vessel continued into the nebula. By the time our ships recovered, the humans had vanished into the void." The chamber erupted in outrage. Species after species voiced their anger at humanity's reckless behavior. The humans had only been part of the Galactic Council for 50 years, barely a heartbeat in cosmic terms, yet they constantly pushed boundaries and questioned ancient laws. High Counselor Vornash, eldest of the council members, raised a crystalline appendage for silence. "The humans must be taught a lesson. Their arrogance endangers us all. If they have awakened something in the Void Nebula, then we must act swiftly," Krixtar interrupted. "I propose we send the Eternal Guard." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. The Eternal Guard were the galaxy's most feared warriors, genetically engineered super soldiers who had ended 1,000 conflicts over the millennia. Each Guard member was worth a battalion of regular troops, equipped with armor that could withstand direct hits from plasma cannons and weapons that could level city blocks. "Is that not excessive?" ventured a smaller ambassador from the back of the chamber. "Excessive," Krixtar scoffed. "The humans have proven time and again that conventional measures don't work with them. They're unpredictable, chaotic, and seemingly incapable of respecting authority. The Eternal Guard will retrieve the colonists from a nebula and demonstrate to humanity that there are consequences for defying the Council." The vote was called, and one by one the species cast their decision. The result was overwhelming. The Eternal Guard would be deployed. 3 days later, a fleet of sleek black warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Void Nebula. Each vessel carried a squad of Eternal Guard warriors, their bio-enhanced bodies sealed within powered armor that made them look more like walking tanks than living beings. Commander Zekros stood on the bridge of the lead ship, studying the swirling energies of the nebula through the view screen. He had led the Guard for 2 centuries, had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds, had made entire species surrender with just the threat of his arrival. Dealing with one human colony ship would be child's play. Sensors detect the human vessel approximately 10,000 kilometers inside the nebula, reported his lieutenant. They appear to be holding position near an anomalous energy reading. "Of course they are," Zekros muttered. "Humans and their curiosity. Deploy all Guard units. I want that ship secured within the hour." As the Guard ships entered the nebula, strange energies crackled around their hulls. The further they went, the more intense the readings became. Something was wrong here, something that made even the battle-hardened Guard members uneasy. They found the human colony ship exactly where the sensors indicated, floating serenely despite the chaos of energies swirling around it. The vessel looked small and fragile compared to the Guard warships surrounding it, almost primitive with its rotating sections and exposed radiator panels. "Human vessel, this is Commander Zekros of the Eternal Guard. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." For a moment, there was only silence. Then a human voice crackled over the communications channel, calm and almost amused. "Commander Zekros, this is Captain Sarachun of the colony ship Horizon's Dream. I'm afraid we can't comply with your request. You see, we're in the middle of something rather important here. Zekros felt his anger rise. No one spoke to the Eternal Guard with such casual dismissal. Captain Shun, you are in violation of Galactic Council law. You will surrender, or we will take your ship by force. I wouldn't recommend that, Commander, Captain Shun replied. You really don't understand what you're walking into. The Void Nebula isn't what your council thinks it is. It's not a graveyard or a cursed place. It's a testing ground. Enough of your games, human. All units, prepare for boarding action. The Eternal Guard launched from their ships like missiles, their powered armor carrying them across the void toward the human vessel. Each warrior was a perfect killing machine, trained from birth, enhanced beyond the limits of normal biology, armed with weapons that had ended civilizations. As they approached the colony ship, something strange happened. The energies of the nebula suddenly intensified, forming patterns that looked almost deliberate. The Guard members found their armor systems flickering, their weapons powering down and up randomly. Commander, something's interfering with our equipment, one Guard member reported, voice tight with concern. Push through, Zekros ordered. It's just the nebula's natural phenomena. The humans are probably using it as cover. But as the first Guard members reached the colony ship's hull, preparing to cut through with plasma torches, the interference became something else entirely. The space around them shimmered, and suddenly, they weren't alone. Figures materialized out of the nebula's energies. Human figures, but not quite. They wore no armor, no environmental suits, yet they stood in the vacuum of space as if it were a summer day. Their eyes glowed with the same strange energy that permeated the nebula, and when they smiled, it was with a knowledge that seemed older than the stars. "Hello, Commander," one of them said, and somehow the words carried through the void directly into Zekros's mind. "We've been waiting for you." "Well, not you specifically. We've been waiting for someone to finally push humanity far enough to reveal what we've become." Zekros felt something he hadn't experienced in 2 centuries of combat. Fear. "What are you?" "We're what happens when humans find something everyone else is too afraid to investigate," the figure replied. "The precursors didn't vanish, Commander. They evolved, and they left their testing ground behind for others to find. Others brave enough, curious enough, stubborn enough to risk everything for knowledge. The Eternal Guard found themselves surrounded, not by weapons or ships, but by humans who had somehow merged with the energies of the nebula itself. Each one radiated power that made the Guard's enhanced strength seem like a child's toy. "You see," the evolved human continued, "your Galactic Council made a critical error. You thought you could contain humanity with rules and restrictions. But humans don't see boundaries as walls. We see them as challenges. And when you told us to stay away from the Void Nebula, you practically guaranteed we'd come here." "This is impossible," Zekros snarled, trying to maintain his composure even as his warrior's instincts screamed danger. "You're still just humans. The Eternal Guard has defeated species far more advanced than you." The evolved human smile widened. "That's where you're wrong, Commander. We're not just anything anymore. The colony ship was bait. We knew the Council would eventually send their best warriors after us. We wanted to see what the galaxy's greatest fighters could do against humanity's newest evolution. The battle, if it could be called that, was over before it began. The Eternal Guard, for all their enhancements and training, were still bound by the laws of physics. The evolved humans were not. They moved through space like ghosts, phasing through armor as if it weren't there, disabling weapons with a thought, turning the Guard's own enhancements against them. Zekros watched in horror as his warriors, the greatest fighters the galaxy had ever produced, fell one by one. Not killed, but neutralized, their armor systems shut down, their weapons rendered useless, their enhanced bodies suddenly feeling very small and fragile in the face of something beyond their understanding. "Why?" he asked as one of the evolved humans approached him. "Why do this?" "Because humanity has been holding back," came the reply. "We've been playing nice, following your rules, pretending to be just another species finding its place in the galaxy. But that was never who we are. Humans are explorers, Commander. were the species that looked at fire and thought, I can use this. Were the ones who saw the ocean and built boats, who looked at the sky and built wings. And when we found the stars, we built ships to reach them. The evolved human gestured to the nebula around them. The precursors left this gift for whoever was brave enough to claim it. Your council feared it, banned it, tried to forget it existed. But humans? We saw a mystery and had to solve it. And now we have. Zekros felt his armor shutting down, system by system. Soon he would be just another warrior floating helplessly in space, defeated without a single blow being landed. What will you do with us? Nothing, the evolved human said simply. You'll be returned to your ships, unharmed, but unable to fight. Your weapons will be disabled, your armor locked. You'll have just enough power to limp back to council space and deliver a message. What message? The evolved humans began to fade back into the energies of the nebula, their forms becoming indistinct. But their words remained crystal clear. Tell the Galactic Council that humanity is no longer asking for permission. We're not seeking your approval or following your restrictions. The age of human compliance is over. We'll explore where we wish, settle where we choose, and become what we're meant to be. And if anyone tries to stop us, the figure gestured to the helpless Eternal Guard floating around them. Well, you've seen what happens to the galaxy's greatest warriors when they face humanity unleashed. Commander Zekros drifted in the void, his armor dead weight around him, as he watched the human colony ship power up its engines. The vessel that had seemed so primitive, so fragile, now hummed with an energy that made the space around it shimmer like heat waves on a desert world. One by one, his guard members were being collected by automated recovery drones from their own ships, but the drones moved sluggishly, their systems struggling against whatever the evolved humans had done to them. The worst part wasn't the defeat. It was the ease of it. The Eternal Guard had prepared for battle, for violence, for the chaos that humans were known for. Instead, they had been handled like misbehaving children, their power stripped away with casual indifference. No glory, no honor, not even the dignity of a proper fight. Just a demonstration of how utterly outclassed they were. As Zekros was pulled into his flagship's recovery bay, he could hear the panic in his crew's voices over the communication channels. Reports were flooding in from across the fleet. Every single guard member had been neutralized. Weapons that could crack moons were now expensive paperweights. Armor that could withstand stellar radiation couldn't even maintain basic life support. The greatest military force in galactic history had been reduced to helpless observers. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel, his communications officer reported, voice shaking. Put it through, Zekros ordered, though he had to force the words past the shame burning in his throat. Captain Chen's face appeared on the view screen, but something was different about her now. Her eyes held flecks of the same energy that permeated the nebula, and when she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Commander Zekros, I want you to understand something. What happened here today wasn't an attack. It was a revelation. For 50 years, humanity has been treated like children at the galactic table, told where we can and cannot go, what we can and cannot do. We've played along because we want to be good neighbors. But the Void Nebula has shown us the truth. What truth? Zekros asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. That the galaxy has been standing still for millennia, Chen replied. Your precursors didn't vanish, Commander. They grew beyond the need for physical form, beyond the petty squabbles of territorial species. They left their knowledge here as a test, waiting to see who would be brave enough to claim it. And in 3,000 years, only humanity had the courage to try. The view screen expanded, showing not just Chun, but dozens of crew members behind her, all bearing the same transformed appearance. We're not conquerors, Commander. We're not interested in ruling or destroying. But we will not be caged by fear and tradition any longer. Humanity is going to push boundaries, ask uncomfortable questions, and explore every dark corner of the universe that other species are too frightened to examine. The Council will not accept this, Zekros warned. They'll mobilize every fleet, call upon ancient weapons. Chin's laughter cut him off, but it wasn't mocking. It was almost pitying. Commander, your entire guard was defeated without a single casualty. Do you really think conventional fleets will fare better? But, more importantly, we don't want war. We want progress. The galaxy has been stagnant for too long, locked in the same patterns, the same hierarchies, the same fears. She leaned forward, and for a moment, Zekros could swear he saw the birth and death of stars in her eyes. Take this message back to the Council. Humanity is opening doors that have been closed for millennia. We're going to find every secret the universe has hidden away, every technology deemed too dangerous, every path marked as forbidden. And we're going to share what we find. Share. Zekros couldn't hide his surprise. Of course, Chin smiled. Knowledge hoarded is knowledge wasted. But it will be offered freely, not forced. Species can choose to evolve with us or remain as they are. We won't judge either choice. But we will not be stopped from seeking truth, no matter how uncomfortable it makes others. The transmission began to fade, but Chun had one final message. Oh, and Commander, your armor and weapons will reactivate once you're beyond the nebula's edge. Consider it a professional courtesy from one warrior tradition to another. Safe travels. The connection severed, leaving Zekros staring at a blank screen. Around him, his crew worked frantically to prepare the fleet for departure. The mighty Eternal Guard warships, pride of 100 civilizations, limped away from the Void Nebula like wounded animals. The journey back to Council space took 3 times longer than the outward trip. With their advanced systems still glitching, they had to rely on backup navigation and standard engines. It gave Zekros too much time to think, to replay the encounter over and over in his mind. He had studied human military history as part of his preparation. He knew about their guerrilla tactics, their adaptability, their seemingly insane willingness to weaponize anything and everything. But this was different. The humans hadn't outfought the Guard. They had transcended the very concept of fighting. When the fleet finally emerged in Council space, they found a galaxy in uproar. News of the Guard's deployment had spread, and every species was waiting for word of humanity's punishment. The sight of the limping warships, their weapons dark and armor scarred by nebula energies, sent shockwaves through the assembled diplomatic vessels. The emergency council session was called immediately. Zekros stood in the same chamber where this had all begun, facing the same representatives who had voted to send him. But now, instead of confidence and superiority, he saw fear in their various optical organs. Report, Commander. High Counselor Vornash ordered, though his crystalline form trembled slightly. Zekros had given many battle reports in his centuries of service. He had described victories and the rare tactical withdrawal. But he had never had to explain something like this. The Eternal Guard encountered the human vessel within the Void Nebula as planned. He began, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. Upon attempting to board and secure the ship, we were intercepted by humans who had undergone some form of transformation through interaction with the nebula's energies. Transformation? Ambassador Krigstar klicked anxiously. What kind of transformation? They had merged with the nebula itself, Zekros explained. They existed in physical space without environmental protection. They manipulated energy and matter at will. They disabled our entire fleet without firing a single weapon, without causing a single casualty. We were not defeated in battle. We were simply dismissed. The chamber erupted in chaos. Species that had maintained diplomatic composure for centuries shouted over each other, demanding answers, proposing responses, voicing fears that had been buried for millennia. Order, Fonash commanded. Commander, what are the humans' intentions? Zekros activated a holographic projector, displaying Captain Chen's transformed image. They claimed the precursors didn't vanish, but evolved, leaving the nebula as a test for whoever was brave enough to seek transcendence. The humans intend to explore every forbidden zone, investigate every banned technology, and uncover every secret the galaxy has hidden. They say they will share their discoveries freely, but will not be deterred from their path. This is unacceptable. Ambassador Sherlon's translucent form pulsed with agitation. If they access the sealed vaults of Kepler 442, or the time fractures near the galactic core, or the how do you propose we stop them? Zekros interrupted, abandoning protocol. The Eternal Guard, your ultimate military option, was neutralized without effort. They could have destroyed us, but they chose to send us back as messengers. That, honored representatives, is the most terrifying part of all. They're not afraid of us. They're not even angry at us. They see us as irrelevant to their goals. Silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had maintained order through a combination of diplomacy and the threat of force. The Eternal Guard had been their ultimate deterrent. The stick that ensured the carrot was accepted. Now, that stick had been snapped like a twig, and the hand that held it hadn't even noticed the effort. Perhaps, a small voice spoke from the back of the chamber. We should consider a different approach. All eyes turned to see Ambassador Yip Lee of the Centauri Collective, one of the newest member species, having joined only a decade before humanity. The humans have not attacked us. They've not demanded tribute or territory. They've offered to share their discoveries. Maybe, instead of trying to contain them, we should try to understand them. Understand them? Krixtar scoffed. They're chaos incarnate. They'll destabilize everything we've built. Have we built anything worth preserving? Yip Lee countered. When was the last time any of our civilizations made a truly new discovery? When did we last push a boundary or question a restriction? We've become curators of ancient fears, not builders of the future. The debate raged for hours, but Zekros barely heard it. His mind kept returning to those transformed humans, to the easy way they had moved through space, to the profound sadness in Captain Chen's voice when she spoke of the galaxy's stagnation. He thought of his own life, 2 centuries of enforcing rules he'd never questioned, protecting a status quo he'd never examined. The Eternal Guard was called eternal because they were unchanging, perfect warriors frozen at the peak of their abilities. But the humans had shown him that perfection could be a prison, that sometimes the greatest strength was the willingness to become something more. As the council continued to argue, a junior aide rushed into the chamber with a data pad, whispered urgently to High Counselor Vornash. The ancient being's crystalline form flickered rapidly through several color spectrums, the equivalent of a gasp of shock. Honored representatives, Vornash announced, his voice cutting through the debate. I have just received reports from across the galaxy. The humans, they're already moving. The main display lit up with a galactic map, dots of light appearing at locations that made various species cry out in alarm. The sealed vaults of Kepler, 442. The time fractures. The consciousness storms of the Magellanic Clouds. Every location that had been declared forbidden, every anomaly deemed too dangerous to investigate, now showed human presence. Impossible, someone whispered. Those locations are light years apart. Even with our fastest ships, they're not using ships, Zekros said quietly, understanding dawning. They don't need them anymore. The nebula didn't just transform them physically. It gave them access to something beyond our understanding of physics. As if to confirm his words, new reports flooded in. Human figures walking unprotected through the radioactive ruins of ancient battlefields. Humans diving into black holes and emerging unscathed with impossible data. Humans conversing with energy beings that had been deemed too alien for contact. And with each discovery, each impossible feat, messages arrived at Council Worlds. Not demands or threats, but invitations. Research data on curing diseases that had plagued species for millennia. Energy equations that could power civilizations without depleting resources. Philosophical insights from beings so ancient their origins were myth. They're not conquering, Yip Lee said wonderingly. They're teaching. But not everyone was ready to learn. Several warlike species, seeing the Council's impotence, launched their own attacks on human colonies. The results were even more devastating than what had happened to the Eternal Guard. Entire fleets simply stopped functioning. Their crews returned to their home worlds with a message. Violence is a choice. Choose differently. Within days, the established order of 3 millennia began to crack. Some species embraced the changes, sending delegations to human space to learn. Others retreated into isolation, building ever higher walls against a future they couldn't control. The Galactic Council found itself struggling to remain relevant in a galaxy where its greatest threats had become humanity's playground. And at the center of it all, the transformed humans continued their work. They didn't seek worship or submission. They simply existed, explored, and shared, living embodiments of what happened when a species refused to accept limitations. Commander Zekros received a personal message a week after his report. It was from Captain Shun, her transformed features still recognizable despite the energy that now comprised part of her being. "Commander," she said, "I wanted to thank you for your restraint in not attempting a suicidal last stand. It shows wisdom, and wisdom is what the galaxy needs now. The offer extends to you as well. The Eternal Guard doesn't have to be eternal in stasis. You could become eternal in growth instead." The message ended with coordinates, not to a location, but to a possibility. Zekros stared at those coordinates for a long time. Around him, the Eternal Guard struggled to find purpose in a galaxy where their strength meant nothing. Some spoke of revenge, others of adaptation. But all of them knew, deep in their enhanced bones, that something fundamental had changed. The humans had been unleashed, not through violence or conquest, but through transcendence. And in doing so, they had shown the galaxy a terrifying truth. The greatest warriors weren't those who could destroy, but those who could become something beyond the need for destruction. The age of enforcement was over. The age of evolution had begun. And somewhere in the Void Nebula, more human ships were arriving, their crews eager to take the first step toward becoming what the galaxy had always feared most, a species without limits. 6 months after the Eternal Guard's defeat, the galaxy had split into 3 distinct camps. The progressives, led by younger species like the Centauri Collective, actively sought out human knowledge and embraced the changes. The isolationists, primarily the older, founding members of the Council, retreated behind increasingly powerful shields and barriers, trying to preserve their traditional ways. And then there were the desperate, those who believed that if they could just find the right weapon, the right strategy, they could restore the old order. Admiral Krexmar of the warrior caste belonged firmly in the 3rd category. The insectoid commander stood aboard his flagship, the Decimator, watching as his assembled fleet prepared for what he had convinced his followers would be the decisive battle. Where the Council had failed with their outdated guard, he would succeed with cunning and firepower. "Admiral, all ships report ready," his lieutenant chittered. "The quantum destabilizer is primed and aimed at the human colony world of New Horizon." Krexmar's compound eyes studied the peaceful planet below. It was one of humanity's newest settlements, established after their transformation. No orbital defenses, no fleet presence, just a beautiful world with a few million humans living in harmony with the environment. It would be the perfect target to demonstrate that the transformed humans weren't invincible. "Begin the countdown," he ordered. The quantum destabilizer was a forbidden weapon, banned by the Council for its ability to unravel matter at the subatomic level. But desperate times call for desperate measures. If he could destroy just one human world, prove they could bleed, maybe the galaxy would find its courage again. The massive weapon began to charge, drawing power from a dozen support vessels. Energy readings spiked across every spectrum as space itself seemed to groan under the strain. In 30 seconds, New Horizon would cease to exist, along with every human on it. 20 seconds. The weapon's aperture glowed with impossible light. 10 seconds. Krexmar's mandibles clicked in anticipation. 5 seconds. Victory was within reach. 0. The weapon fired, a beam of pure destruction that could unmake stars. It streaked toward New Horizon at the speed of light. carrying enough energy to reduce the planet to quantum foam. And then it stopped. Not slowed, not deflected, not absorbed. Stopped. The beam hung frozen in space, a solid bar of destructive energy suspended between the fleet and the planet like a bridge of light. What's happening? Krexmar demanded. Why isn't it? His words died as figures began walking up the frozen beam toward his fleet. Human figures strolling along a column of planet-killing energy as if it were sidewalk. They weren't wearing any protection, just simple clothes that rippled with the same energy that had transformed them. The lead figure was a human child, no more than 10 years old by their species' reckoning. She skipped along the beam, actually skipped while juggling what appeared to be miniature stars in her hands. Behind her, adults and elders walked with equal ease, some deep in conversation, others admiring the view of space around them. "Hello," the child called out when she reached the decimator's hull, her voice somehow carrying through vacuum and armor to resound on the bridge. "I'm Lucy. My mom said I could come talk to you since you're trying to blow up our planet. She says it's important to use our words when someone's being mean." Krexmar stared at his view screen in disbelief. A child. The humans had sent a child to confront his battle fleet. "All weapons, open fire," he screamed. The fleet erupted in violence. Plasma cannons, missile barges, kinetic railguns. Everything they had poured toward the small figures standing on their frozen beam. The space around them became a maelstrom of destruction that would have vaporized mountains. When the smoke cleared, Lucy was sitting cross-legged on the beam, the miniature stars still dancing above her palms. The other humans hadn't even paused their conversations. "That wasn't very nice," Lucy said, pouting. "My teacher says violence is what people use when they run out of smart things to say. Don't you have any smart things to say?" "This is impossible," Krexmar's lieutenant whispered. "They're just standing there." "How are they just standing there?" An older human, gray-haired and wearing what looked like a gardener's apron, stepped forward. "Admiral Krexmar, I'm Professor Chun, Sarah Chin's father. Actually, you might have heard of her from the Void Nebula incident. I'm what you might call semi-retired these days. Spend most of my time growing tomatoes that exist in 7 dimensions simultaneously. Fascinating work, really, but I digress." He gestured to the frozen beam beneath his feet. "You see, the problem with weapons like this is that they're based on a fundamental misunderstanding of reality. You think in terms of destruction and creation as if they're opposite forces. But once you've been through the transformation, you realize they're just different expressions of the same thing. Energy is energy. It doesn't care what you want it to do." To demonstrate, he reached down and plucked a section of the frozen beam like picking a flower. The chunk of solidified destruction transformed in his hands, reshaping itself into a glowing orchid that he tucked behind Lucy's ear. "Pretty," the girl exclaimed. "Now," Professor Chun continued, "we could turn your entire fleet into a garden. It would be quite beautiful. Imagine thousands of ships transformed into a floating forest in space. But that would be imposing our will on you, and we've decided that's not the human way anymore." "Then what do you want?" Krexmar asked, his warrior's pride warring with the existential terror of seeing his ultimate weapon turned into a child's toy. "We want you to think," another human said, stepping forward. She wore the uniform of what had once been Earth's military, though it now seemed more ceremonial than functional. "I'm General Martinez. 20 years ago, I would have answered your attack with overwhelming force. But the transformation taught us something important. The best warriors are those who know when not to fight." She gestured to the fleet around them. "You have 300 ships here, Admiral. 12,000 crew members. Each one with families, dreams, fears. Are you really willing to throw all that away just to prove a point that's already been disproven? You're trying to destroy our way of life." Krexmar protested. "The order that has kept the galaxy stable for millennia." "Stable," Lucy piped up, still playing with her stars. "My dad says stable is just another word for stuck. Like when my toy got stuck in the quantum field and wouldn't phase back. Sometimes you have to shake things up to make them work better." Professor Chun smiled at his granddaughter, then turned back to the view screen. Admiral, do you know what the most amazing thing about the transformation is? It doesn't make you stop being human. It makes you more human. We still love, still laugh, still cry. We just do it across multiple dimensions now. Some of us still argue about politics. General Martinez added with a wry smile. We just do it while surfing gravitational waves. And we still make mistakes, another human admitted. Last week, I accidentally turned a moon purple while trying to make tea. My wife still won't let me forget it. Despite himself, Krexmar found his terror slowly being replaced by confusion. These beings who could walk on planet-killing energy and juggle stars were talking about tomatoes and tea and domestic arguments. They had the power of gods, but the concerns of mortals. I don't understand, he admitted. If you have such power, why don't you use it? Why let lesser species threaten you? Why not rule? Lucy looked up from her stars, her expression suddenly serious beyond her years. Because ruling is boring. Exploring is fun. Making friends is better than making servants. And besides, she grinned again. If we ruled everything, who would we learn from? The frozen beam beneath their feet began to shift, its energy transforming from destruction into something else. Where once there had been a column of death, now there was a bridge of light connecting the fleet to the planet below. This is what we're offering, Professor Chen explained. Not domination, but connection. Not an end to your ways, but an expansion of them. The warrior caste has always defined itself through conflict. But what if you could be warriors against ignorance instead of each other? What if your battles were against the mysteries of the universe rather than your fellow sapients? General Martinez stepped forward. Admiral, I've studied your people's history. You've produced some of the finest tactical minds in the galaxy. Imagine what those minds could do if applied to exploring pocket dimensions or mapping the consciousness streams between galaxies. The universe is full of challenges that make conventional warfare look like children's games. You're asking us to abandon everything we are, Krexmar said, but the protest sounded weak even to his own ears. No, Lucy said firmly. We're asking you to become everything you could be. Like when I was scared to jump off the high dive at the pool. I was still Lucy after I jumped, just a braver Lucy. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of confused systems trying to understand why their ultimate weapon had become a bridge. Krexmar's officers looked to him for guidance, but he found himself staring at the transformed humans with a mixture of fear and wonder. What would happen to us? He finally asked. If we chose transformation? Professor Chen smiled gently. You become yourself, just more so. The transformation doesn't erase who you are. It reveals it. Every species experiences it differently. The Centauri Collective found they could merge consciousness across light years. The Aquari learned to swim through dark matter. One group of humans discovered they could taste colors and paint with flavors. It's not about becoming human. It's about becoming fully yourself. And if we refuse, then you go home, General Martinez said simply. We'll disable your weapons. Can't have you trying this again, but we won't harm you. You'll be free to live as you choose, just without the ability to impose that choice on others. Krexmar felt the weight of decision crushing down on him. His entire life had been devoted to conflict, to the glory of battle, and the honor of victory. But what glory was there in fighting beings who treated planet killers as toys? What honor in battles that were over before they began? I need to consult with my officers, he said finally. Take your time, Professor Chen nodded. Lucy and I should probably get back anyway. She has violin practice in an hour, and she needs to tune her instrument to the quantum frequencies of the Andromeda Galaxy. It's for the recital, Lucy added excitedly. We're playing music that hasn't been invented yet. The humans began walking back down the Bridge of Light, chatting among themselves about ordinary things, dinner plans, a new art exhibition, someone's pet that had learned to phase through walls. The sheer normalcy of it in the face of such power was perhaps the most unsettling thing of all. The debates on Krexmar's bridge lasted hours. Some officers wanted to retreat, to warn others about what they'd seen. Others argued for attacking again with different weapons. But a growing number began to ask different questions. What if the humans were right? What if there was more to existence than eternal conflict? In the end, it was the youngest officer who swayed them. Look at us, she said. We came here with the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, and they turned it into a bridge. Not to humiliate us, but to invite us across. When in our history has an enemy ever done that? 3 days later, Admiral Krexmar stood on the surface of New Horizon. The planet was even more beautiful up close, with cities that seemed to grow from the landscape itself, and parts where the laws of physics bent to create impossible beauty. Lucy ran up to him, still juggling her stars. You came. Mom said you might, but Dad thought you'd be too stubborn. I bet him my dessert you'd choose to be brave. I'm not sure this is bravery, Krexmar admitted, looking at the transformation chamber the humans had prepared. It looked surprisingly simple, just a room filled with the same energy that had changed them. Sure it is, Lucy said confidently. Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing something even when you are scared. Like me with a high dive, or you with becoming something new. Professor Chin approached, wiping soil from his hands. Admiral, before you decide, you should know the transformation is just the beginning. What you become after, that's up to you. We can't promise it will be easy. We can only promise it will be worth it. Krexmar looked around at the transformed humans going about their daily lives. Children playing in gardens where flowers sang. Artists painting with light itself. Scientists casually discussing theories that would have been madness months ago. Warriors training in combat forms that incorporated multiple dimensions. They hadn't stopped being human. They had just started being more. My entire cast trained for war, he said. What place would we have in a universe without it? General Martinez, who had been training some young humans in what looked like dimensional martial arts, overheard. Admiral, the universe is full of conflicts. They're just not all violent. There are predatory entities in subspace that feed on consciousness. There are puzzles left by ancient civilizations that guard incredible treasures. There are storms of pure thought that threaten entire sectors. We need warriors, just not the kind that only know how to destroy. Besides, Lucy added, transformation doesn't mean you can't fight anymore. It just means when you do fight, it's really, really cool. Want to see me juggle black holes? Perhaps later, Krexmar said quickly. He looked at the transformation chamber again, then at his officers who had chosen to accompany him. Some looked eager, others terrified, but all were here. If we do this, he said, what happens to those who don't choose it? My species, others who prefer the old ways. They live as they choose, Professor Chin said. We'll share knowledge with any who want it, protect those who need it, but force no one. The galaxy is big enough for all choices. Though I suspect once they see what you become, many will follow. Krexmar made his decision. The warrior who had come to destroy a world would instead help build a new future. As he stepped toward the chamber, Lucy tugged on his arm. Hey, Admiral, when you transform, could you learn to juggle too? It's really fun, and I could use someone practice with who has more than 2 arms. Despite everything, Krexmar found himself laughing, a sound his species made rarely. I'll consider it. As the transformation energy enveloped him, his last thought, as a purely physical being, was that perhaps the humans had been right all along. The greatest warriors weren't those who conquered worlds, but those who conquered their own limitations. And somewhere in the galaxy, the old order continued to crumble as more species chose evolution over extinction, growth over stagnation, wonder over fear. The humans hadn't unleashed their greatest warriors through violence. They had unleashed them through possibility. 1 year after the transformation began, the galaxy had become unrecognizable. What started as humanity's rebellion against restrictions had evolved into something far greater, a renaissance of consciousness that touched every corner of known space. But with great change came great resistance, and in the deepest vaults of the galaxy's oldest civilizations, ancient powers stirred. The Pre-March Council was legend, whispered about, but never seen as old as the first stellar civilizations. They were the true power behind a galactic council, the ones who had shaped the rules and restrictions that governed space for millions of years. And now, for the first time in eons, all 7 Primarchs gathered in person. Their meeting place existed outside normal space-time, a pocket dimension where thoughts became reality and reality bent to will. Each Primarch was less a physical being and more a concept given form. Order, stasis, control, tradition, authority, hierarchy, and dominion. They had guided the galaxy through careful manipulation, ensuring that no species ever grew powerful enough to challenge the established order. Until now, the humans spread like a virus, order intoned, its form a perfect geometric pattern that never quite resolved into a single shape. 40% of known species have undergone or begun the transformation process. The carefully maintained balance of power is collapsing. Worse, stasis added, manifesting as an eternal moment frozen in crystal. They're awakening things that should remain sleeping. The Void Nebula was just the beginning. They've accessed the dream gates of Sagittarius, communed with the entropy dancers, even made contact with the entities beyond the galactic edge. Control's form writhed like chains made of light. Every restriction we put in place over the millennia is being systematically violated. The forbidden technologies, the quarantine zones, the suppressed knowledge. Humans treat them like a checklist of adventures. Then, we must act, Dominion declared, appearing as a crown that ruled over shadows. If conventional forces cannot stop them, we must use the final contingency. The other Primarchs recoiled at the suggestion. The final contingency was their ultimate failsafe, a reset button for galactic civilization. It would wipe out not just the transformed humans, but every species that had achieved spaceflight, returning the galaxy to primordial silence. They would then guide evolution again, more carefully this time, ensuring such chaos could never emerge. Is there no other way? Tradition asked, its form cycling through the symbols of 1,000 dead civilizations. The cost. What cost is too high to preserve order? Authority demanded, manifesting as a gavel that struck against reality itself. We have shepherded this galaxy since before stars learned to burn properly. We will not see our work undone by one upstart species that refuses to know its place. Hierarchy nodded agreement. Its form a pyramid where every brick was a subjugated civilization. The humans have shown others that our rules can be broken. Even if we stop them now, the idea would remain. Only a complete reset ensures stability. The debate might have continued for eons. Time meant little to beings of their nature, but it was interrupted by something impossible. A human child materialized in their sacred space, popping into existence like a soap bubble. It was Lucy, still juggling her stars, now accompanied by what appeared to be a pet that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. "Hi," she said cheerfully. "Sorry to interrupt, but my friend Whiskers here smelled something interesting, and we followed him. Are you having a party?" The Primarchs stared in shock that transcended their conceptual existence. Nothing should be able to enter their space. It was warded by powers that predated the current universe, protected by barriers that could turn thoughts into oblivion. "Ow!" Order managed to ask. Lucy shrugged, a gesture that somehow caused minor fluctuations in local causality. Whiskers is really good at finding hidden spaces. Last week he found where Mom hid the cookies in a pocket dimension. "Oh, are you the scary people Admiral Krexmar told me about? You don't look that scary. You look sad." "Sad," Control sputtered. "We are the architects of galactic civilization. We are power incarnate." "Yeah, but you're all alone in here," Lucy observed, looking around the empty dimension. "And you're so worried about keeping things the same that you forgot to ask if things should stay the same. My teacher says that's called being stuck in a rut." Before the Primarchs could respond, more figures began to appear. Professor Chen stepped through a fold in space, followed by General Martinez, Admiral Krexmar in a transformed state, and dozens of others representing various transformed species. "Lucy, there you are," Professor Chen said mildly. "Your mother's looking for you." "Oh, hello," he added, noticing the Primarchs. "You must be the ones who've been trying to keep the galaxy in stasis for the past few million years. We've been hoping to meet you. You dare invade our sanctum? Dominion roared, power gathering around its form. Invade is such a strong word, General Martinez said. We'd prefer visit. After all, neighbors should get to know each other. We are not neighbors, Authority declared. We are your superiors, the eternal guides of, oh, please, a transformed Aquari interrupted, her form flowing between states of matter. We've seen your work. Thousands of civilizations held back from their potential. Entire species convinced they were inferior when they just thought differently. Knowledge suppressed because it threatened your control. You're not guides. You're wardens. Hierarchy bristled. Order must be maintained. Without us, the galaxy would descend into chaos. Would it, though? Admiral Krexmar asked. His transformation had turned the insectoid warrior into something that existed partially in probability space, able to see potential futures. Because from where I'm standing, the past year has seen more cooperation between species than the previous 1,000. Turns out, when you stop telling people they have to stay in their assigned boxes, they start working together instead of against each other. You don't understand the forces you're playing with, Stasis warned. The things we've kept locked away, like the song of creation in the Magellan Clouds, a transformed human artist interrupted. We found that last month. Turns out it wasn't a weapon at all. It's a tool for painting reality. The precursors used it to make nebulae that tell stories. We've been collaborating with 12 species to create the biggest art installation in galactic history. Or the time streams near the core, another added. Not dangerous if you know how to swim them properly. We've been teaching courses. The Consciousness Forge, someone else chimed in, makes great coffee when you adjust the settings right. One by one, the transformed beings listed the Primarch's greatest secrets, their most feared discoveries, revealing them to be not horrors, but wonders that have been misunderstood or deliberately misrepresented. This is exactly what we feared, Order said. You use powers you don't comprehend, treat cosmic forces like toys. No, Lucy interrupted, her young voice carrying surprising authority. We treat them like what they are, parts of the universe we live in. You're so scared of everything that you forgot fear is just your brain telling you to be careful, not to stop moving forward. She walked up to Order, still juggling her stars, and held one out. Here, want to try? It's not hard once you get the hang of it. Order recoiled as if offered poison. That's a stellar core. It could destroy, only if you squeeze too hard, Lucy said patiently. But if you're gentle, if you work with it instead of trying to control it, it's beautiful. See, she tossed the star up, where it expanded into a light show that painted impossible colors across the dimension. For a moment, even the Primarchs seemed transfixed by the beauty of uncontrolled creation. This is what you've been missing, Professor Chen said gently. The universe isn't something to be controlled. It's something to be danced with. Yes, sometimes you step on its toes, and sometimes it steps on yours. But the dance itself is glorious. You would risk everything for a dance. Control asked, but its voice had lost some of its certainty. We'd risk stagnation for growth, General Martinez replied. We'd risk the known for the possible. We'd risk safety for wonder, because that's what it means to be truly alive. And we're not asking you to risk it alone, a transformed Centauri added. The invitation extends to you as well. You've spent eons maintaining a system. What if you could help build something new instead? The Primarchs fell silent. These beings who had controlled the galaxy's fate since before recorded history found themselves facing something they had never prepared for. Not conquest, not defiance, but invitation. You don't understand, Tradition said finally, its voice heavy with ages. We've seen civilizations rise and fall. We've watched species destroy themselves with power they couldn't handle. The restrictions, the control, they were never about dominion. They were about protection. Protecting who? Lucy asked innocently. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you protected everyone so much they forgot how to grow. She's not wrong, Admiral Krexmar observed. My species spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war, because that's all we were allowed to excel at. How many other civilizations limited themselves because you decided what they could and couldn't explore? Stasis flickered, its crystalline form showing cracks. But without guidance, without limits, we're not suggesting no limits, Professor Chen said. We're suggesting that beings should choose their own limits based on wisdom, not have them imposed by fear. Yes, some will make mistakes. Some already have, but they learn from them and grow stronger. Tell them about the Zalathi incident, General Martinez suggested. A transformed human scientist stepped forward. 3 months ago, a group of newly transformed Zalathi tried to convert their star into a multidimensional power source. They miscalculated and almost created a causality loop that would have erased their system from history. The Primarchs leaned forward, expecting vindication. So we helped them fix it, the scientist continued. Humans, Aquari, Centauri, even some non-transformed species. We all worked together, shared knowledge, found a solution. Not only did we prevent the disaster, but we learned something new about stellar mechanics that's revolutionized energy production. Mistakes aren't failures if you learn from them. But the final contingency, Dominion began. Oh, we know about that too, Lucy said casually. Whiskers found it last week when we were playing hide and seek. It's that big red button in the dimension next door, right? The one that smells like endings. The Primarch's shock was palpable. Their ultimate secret, casually discovered by a child playing games. We disabled it, General Martinez added. Not destroyed, we understand the fear that created it. But disabled. Because ending everything is never the answer. It's just giving up with extra steps. Then, we have already lost, Order said, its geometric form beginning to waver. Everything we built, everything we maintained, you haven't lost, Professor Chen said kindly. You've just been offered a chance to win differently. The galaxy doesn't need shepherds anymore. It needs partners. Your knowledge, your experience. Imagine what we could build together instead of what you built alone. Lucy walked up to each pre-march in turn, still offering her juggled stars. Come on, try it. Just once. What's the worst that could happen? The galaxy could burn, Hierarchy said weakly. Or it could shine, Lucy countered. Won't know unless you try. One by one, the other transformed beings share their stories. Species that had been enemies for millennia now working together. Mysteries solved that led to greater mysteries. Art and science and philosophy flowering in ways the rigid old system had never allowed. And through it all, the message was consistent. Transformation didn't mean destruction. It meant possibility. Finally, impossibly, tradition reached out with an appendage that had never known physical form and gently took one of Lucy's stars. The effect was immediate. The star's light spread through tradition's form, not destroying, but illuminating. For the first time in eons, the pre-march saw not just what was or what had been, but what could be. I can see, tradition whispered. So many paths, so many possibilities. How do we miss them all? You were too busy looking backward, Lucy said simply. It's okay. Everyone does that sometimes. The important thing is that you're looking forward now. One by one, the other Primarchs began to waver. Control chains became less binding, more like guidelines. Authority's gavel transformed into a teaching tool. Hierarchy's pyramid inverted and reformed as a network where every point was equally important. Only order and dominion held back, their forms rigid with defiance. This is chaos, Order insisted. Without structure, without rules, we're not abandoning structure, a transformed mathematician interrupted. We're embracing dynamic structure. Order that grows and adapts instead of calcifies. The universe has its own patterns. We just need to learn to recognize them instead of imposing our own. Dominion stood alone, its crown of shadows darker than ever. And what a power! What those who would abuse these gifts? Then, we stopped them, General Martinez said firmly. Together, not as rulers and subjects, but as a community protecting itself. We've already had to deal with a few who thought transformation meant they could dominate others. They learned quickly that when everyone has power, no one has power over everyone. The old way is ending, Admiral Krexmar added. The question is whether you'll help shape what comes next or be left behind by it. The transformed beings began to fade away, their point made. But Lucy lingered, still holding out stars to the two holdout Primarchs. You know, she said thoughtfully, being scared isn't bad. I'm scared of lots of things. But being so scared that you never try anything new, that's the scariest thing of all. Because then you're not really living. You're just existing. With that wisdom that only children can deliver so simply, she too vanished, leaving the Primarchs alone with their thoughts and the lingering light of possibilities. The debate that followed lasted subjective eons. But in the end, even Order and Dominion had to admit what they had always feared. Their time was over. The galaxy had outgrown them. When the Primarchs finally emerged from their hidden dimension, they did so not as controllers but as learners. 7 of the galaxy's oldest beings, taking their first steps into a universe they had shaped but never truly known. Lucy was waiting for them, of course, with whiskers and a welcoming committee of transformed beings. "See," she said proudly, "I told you they weren't that scary. Just lonely. Now, who wants to learn how to juggle supernovas? Fair warning, they're ticklish." And so the architects of the old order began their journey into the new, guided by a child who saw no difference between playing with stars and reshaping civilizations. Both were just games that were more fun with friends. The greatest warriors in the galaxy hadn't conquered through strength. They had conquered through joy, wonder, and the irresistible power of a child's invitation to play. The transformation continued, no longer a human revolution, but a galactic evolution. And at its heart was a simple truth that had taken millions of years to discover. The universe wasn't something to be controlled. It was something to be explored together. 5 years had passed since humanity's transformation began, and the galaxy had become a canvas of infinite possibility. Where once there had been rigid borders and forbidden zones, now there were bridges of light connecting civilizations across impossible distances. Species that had never dreamed of leaving their home systems now danced between dimensions. The transformation had spread like wildfire, but not through conquest, through inspiration. But every fire, no matter how bright, must eventually face its greatest test. The message came from beyond the galactic edge, from the void between galaxies where even light feared to tread. It wasn't a communication in any conventional sense. It was a presence, vast and ancient, that made itself known to every transformed being simultaneously. Sarah Chun, now something between human and living starlight, was teaching a mixed group of species how to navigate probability streams when the presence touched her mind. Around her, students from a dozen different worlds froze as they felt it too. We have been watching. The presence communicated not in words but in concepts that bypassed language entirely. You have played with forces you do not understand. You have awakened things that should have remained sleeping. And now you face judgment. Across the galaxy, transformed beings stopped what they were doing. Lucy paused mid-juggle, her stars hanging frozen in space. Admiral Krexmar ceased his exploration of a pocket dimension. Even the former Primarchs, still learning their new existence, felt the weight of something impossibly ancient turning its attention to them. I'm the silence between, the presence continued. I am what exists in the spaces between galaxies, between thoughts, between possibilities. For eons beyond counting, I have watched civilizations rise and fall. When they grow too proud, too powerful, too chaotic, I end them. It is not cruelty. It is necessity. The universe requires balance, and you have disrupted it entirely. Sarah found herself pulled into a space that wasn't space, a meeting ground where concepts had formed. Around her materialized other transformed beings. Her father, General Martinez, Lucy, Admiral Krexmar, representatives from every species that had embraced change. And at the center of it all was the silence between. It had no true form because it predated form itself. It was the pause between heartbeats given consciousness, the empty space that defined existence by its absence. To look at it was to understand how small even transformed beings were in the face of true cosmic forces. Every million years, the silence between explained, a species discovers what you call transformation. They touched the fundamental nature of reality. They spread their discovery like a virus of possibility. And every time, I must end them before they unravel the very fabric of existence. Why? Lucy asked, apparently unimpressed by cosmic horror. What's wrong with possibility? If a concept could express surprise, the silence between did. Child, do you understand what you've done? Reality is not a toy. It has rules, boundaries, limitations for a reason. Without them, everything collapses into chaos. You've taught a million beings to ignore those rules. We haven't ignored them. Professor Chun corrected gently. We've learned to work with them, to dance with them, as I've said before. There's a difference between breaking rules and transcending them. The silence between pulsed with something like frustration. Words. Always words with young species. Let me show you what your dance leads to. Reality shifted, and they were shown visions of other galaxies other times. Civilizations that had discovered transformation only to tear themselves apart as beings became gods and gods became monsters. Realities that collapsed when too many minds reshaped them simultaneously. The heat death of entire galactic clusters as transformed beings consumed energy faster than the universe could generate it. This is what always happens, the silence between said. This is why I exist. To prevent the ambitious from destroying everything in their eagerness to become more. The visions were horrifying, showing apocalypses beyond imagination. Several of the gathered beings wavered, doubt creeping into their transformed consciousness. Had they been naive? Had their joy in discovery blinded them to consequences? But Lucy, still juggling her stars even in this conceptual space, shook her head. That's not what always happens. That's what happened when beings transformed alone, isn't it? When they kept it secret, used it for power, tried to control it. The silence between paused. Lucy continued, her child's insight cutting through eons of assumption. But we didn't do that. Humans shared transformation with everyone. We made friends, not subjects. We explored together, not alone. That's different, isn't it? Different, perhaps, the silence between admitted. But difference is not enough. You still play with forces beyond comprehension. Observe. It gestured, and they could see the galaxy from a perspective no mortal I had ever achieved. The transformation showed as a web of light, beautiful and chaotic, spreading from star to star. But at the edges, reality itself was beginning to fray. The mass transformation was putting pressure on the fundamental structures of space-time. You see, your joy, your wonder, your community, they mean nothing if reality itself unravels. In perhaps another century, two at most, the cascade will begin. First, this galaxy will collapse, then the neighboring ones, then the entire local group. Your transformation will become a cancer that devours existence itself. The gathered beings felt the weight of this revelation. They had been so caught up in discovery, in the wonder of becoming more, that they hadn't considered the larger implications. Even transcendence had consequences. So what do you want us to do? General Martinez asked. Give up transformation? Go back to being limited? That is no longer possible, the silence between replied. Transformation cannot be reversed, only ended. I will make it quick, painless. Every transformed being will simply cease. Their energy returned to the cosmos. The untransformed will be left with no memory of what occurred. The galaxy will heal, continue as if this never happened. No, Sarah said firmly. There has to be another way. I have ended 17 civilizations that said the same thing. There is no other way. Reality has limits, even for those who transcend them. But what if? Admiral Krexmar began, his tactical mind working even in the face of annihilation. What if we found a different solution? You say the problem is that transformation puts pressure on reality. What if we could relieve that pressure? Impossible. The energy you wield must come from somewhere, go somewhere. You cannot create or destroy, only transform. And each transformation weakens the barriers between what is and what isn't. Unless one of the former Primarchs spoke up, their voice carrying the weight of eons of knowledge. We transform transformation itself. Everyone turned to look at them, Even the silence between seemed intrigued. "Explain," it commanded. "We spent millions of years trying to prevent change, to maintain stasis." The former pre-March continued. "We failed because we saw change as the enemy of order. But what if change itself could be ordered? What if transformation could be made part of reality's structure instead of a violation of it?" Professor Chen's eyes lit up with understanding. Like adding a new, fundamental force to the universe. Not breaking physics, but expanding it. Making transformation as natural as gravity or electromagnetism. "That's never been done," the silence between said, but for the first time, there was uncertainty in its presence. "That's because everyone before us tried to do it alone," Sarah realized. "They transformed as individuals or a single species. But we've transformed as a community. Millions of minds, working together, might have the collective ability to reshape reality's rules to include transformation as a feature, not a bug. You would risk everything on an untested theory." Lucy giggled. "Everything's untested until you test it. That's what makes it fun." The debate that followed spanned hours in subjective time, though only moments passed in reality. The transformed beings shared ideas, theories, possibilities. Scientists from 100 species contributed equations. Artists painted probabilities. Warriors strategized approaches. Children asked questions that revealed hidden assumptions. Finally, they had a plan. Not a perfect plan, but a possible one. "We'll need everyone," Sarah said. "Every transformed being, working in perfect synchronization. We'll need to touch the fundamental code of reality itself and add transformation to it as a basic principle. Make it so that reality expects and accommodates transformation rather than being damaged by it. And if you fail," the silence between asked, "then you do what you were going to do anyway," General Martinez said. "But at least we'll have tried. That's what humans do, what we've taught others to do. We try impossible things because sometimes they turn out to be possible after all." The silence between was quiet for a long moment, contemplating. "I have existed since the first galaxy cooled. I have ended hope 17 times to preserve existence. But never have I seen anything like this. Very well, you may attempt your impossible solution. But know this, if you fail, if reality begins to truly collapse, I will act without hesitation or mercy." "Fair enough," Lucy said cheerfully. "Now, who wants to help rewrite the universe?" The call went out across the galaxy. Every transformed being, from the most advanced to those who had just taken their first steps beyond physical limitation, was asked to participate. It wasn't commanded or demanded. It was invited, in keeping with how the transformation had spread. The response was overwhelming. Millions of minds, each unique, each bringing their own perspective and abilities linked together in a network that spanned the galaxy. Humans and Zalathi, Aquari and Centauri, former enemies and ancient allies, all united in a single purpose. Even the untransformed were included. They couldn't manipulate reality directly, but they could observe, calculate, provide perspective from outside the transformation. Their role was crucial. They would be the control group, the unchanged constants that would help guide the change. Lucy, despite being one of the youngest, found herself at the center of it all. Not because she was the most powerful, but because she had the clearest vision of what they were trying to achieve. In her child's mind, adding transformation to the universe's rules was as simple as adding a new color to a painting. It just had to blend properly with what was already there. "Okay, everyone," she announced, her voice somehow reaching every participant across impossible distances. "Remember, we're not fighting reality. We're asking it to dance with us. Be gentle, be patient, and if something feels wrong, speak up. This is like the biggest group project ever, and everyone's input matters." The work began. Reality rippled as millions of transformed beings reached out with their consciousness, touching the fundamental structures that underlay existence. They found the laws of physics written in the quantum foam, the rules that governed everything from the smallest particle to the largest galactic superstructure. And carefully, delicately, they began to add new verses to the cosmic song. It was incredibly complex. Every addition had to be balanced against what already existed. Too much change in one area caused cascades in others. Several times, they had to stop and recalculate as unintended consequences rippled outward. The silence between watched, ready to end everything at the first sign of true collapse. Several times it nearly acted, as reality groaned under the strain of revision. But each time, the network of minds found a solution, a way to stabilize the changes. "It's working," Professor Chen reported. His consciousness spread across dimensions as he monitored the alterations. Reality is accepting the new parameters. Transformation is becoming part of the natural order. But then, at the crucial moment, something went wrong. A miscalculation, a single variable overlooked, and reality began to crack. Not the small fractures they had dealt with before, but a fundamental schism that threatened to tear everything apart. "I must act," the silence between declared, its presence expanding to engulf the transformed beings. "Wait," Lucy shouted. "I know what's wrong. We're trying too hard." Even in the face of annihilation, her insight pierced through. "We're trying to control it, to make transformation fit perfectly. But that's not what transformation is about. It's about possibility, about things not fitting perfectly. We need to add flexibility to the rule, not rigidity." Understanding dawned across the network. They had been trying to make transformation a fixed law like gravity, but transformation by its nature was about change, about potential. It needed to be a law that could itself transform. With moments to spare before the silence between ended everything, they adjusted their approach. Instead of adding transformation as a rigid rule, they wove it into reality as a principle of adaptive possibility. Reality wouldn't just accommodate transformation. It would expect it, prepare for it, grow from it. The effect was immediate. The cracks in reality didn't just heal, they became strengths, places where possibility was strongest. The pressure that had been building didn't dissipate. It integrated, becoming part of the universe's natural energy flow. "Impossible," the silence between whispered. Then, louder, "Impossible." But the evidence was undeniable. Reality,